Welcome to Opinion Havers, a movie podcast for daddies everywhere.
Daddies everywhere, not a daddy to daddy.
I'm
Daddy.
I'm Cody.
And I'm Daddy. Tyler.
Daddy, what did we watch?
We watched The Fellowship of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Daddies.
Yes, so many daddies in our fellowship. You know what I'm talking about.
Lord of the Rings. We're here.
Who's your favorite daddy?
Boromir.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think my favorite daddy moment was when Gandalf uses his daddy voice.
Oh, yeah.
That big boom, that like,
Yeah.
I like that one.
He's not trying to rob you,
He's trying to help you.
Trying to help you. Being a
good
dumb boy.
There's so much to say. I'm gonna be real. Watching this movie, washed away all of The Hobbit. The taste,
I know, right?
The aftertaste of the Hobbit movies.
It's so
is
good.
completely gone.
This is why I said watch The Hobbits and then these.
I am returned. Yeah.
I watched this trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy epic extraordinaire, and then watched The Hobbit once. It was the worst. It was awful. The GoPro is even more noticeable. If that's possible.
It is. So where do you want to start?
Where we could start at a hole in the ground. A dirty, nasty hole, not a hobbit hole. As a young Gimli bursts out of the hole in the ground, like all dwarf children.
He's plucked out beard first.
Yes, like a ripe carrot.
Here's the thing. I want to throw a curveball at you.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to rant today.
I was just going to say,
It's not here. It's not with me.
I could do the rant, but I also feel like these deserve the full episode. We haven't done a normal, full Opinion Havers TM episode in so long.
You're right. Well, should we start? Let's start at the beginning. Can I share with you my first note, my first thought as we watched this movie? The first thing that struck me.
Tell me.
Number one, of course the dwarves weren't involved in the battle for Middle-earth. Remember at the beginning of the movie, they're like, men and elves, they made the last stand. Of course the dwarves weren't there. They're all tucked away somewhere looking for treasures. I just thought, that was my first thought, like after watching Battle of the Five Armies, and there's the dwarves and the elves and like the random villagers, it's like, of course the dwarves aren't at this battle. Like, there's a little greedy. I feel like I used to be like, dwarves, so rad, so cool. And now, as an adult watching the movie, I'm like, dwarves are kind of the worst.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. They can be, for sure. I also think, I don't know, I haven't read through I'm not all the way through the Silmarillion, because it is dense, especially when you stop in the middle of a poem, basically, that you weren't paying attention to. Like you didn't pay attention to the beginning of it, because there's some in there for all those people out there that you're like, the Silmarillion is a nerd book and I don't want it. Here's the thing that nobody's going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. The Silmarillion is a bunch of stories, so you can really just go through and read the cool ones and skip over the stuff that reads like Exodus, okay? Mm-hmm. Because it's basically the Bible in their world. Like, it's the scriptures of the history of the world. Like, they even say it's like the whole thing is like, oh, they found it. And it's like the history of Middle-earth. Mm-hmm. But it is very much like, but it's basically a religious history, but it's more like a religious and history.
I wouldn't be surprised if J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it, buried it in his backyard, and waited for his son to dig it up and be like, "Oh my goodness, we like just to complete the whole experience. Like we found this, like this old scripture, this lore."
Yeah.
I watched through the whole extended editions, appendices, making of documentary.
Yeah, you did. Was it worth it?
I watched it all. I learned a lot.
It's good, isn't it?
It is good. I wish it had just a little more production value, because it is just like, we got a lot to say, and we slapped a DVD together, which is cool, but it's also like all these Kiwis talking about how hard it was to make the movie and what a good job they did, which is cool, but it's just like, a standard def.
Can I hit
DVD
you with a
thing.
factoid?
What's that?
The ones on The Hobbit, the ones I've seen, are the same thing but higher production value. They're better than the movies in a lot of cases.
The Hobbit making of is better than The Hobbit.
Yep.
I learned a lot of stuff. Yeah. I didn't realize how much of this movie was digital.
Yeah.
So much of it.
Yeah.
They did such a good job. It looks so good.
It was because they did the thing, like so many good movies that use digital do, where they're like, all right, it's not going to age well, so we have to understand the limitations of our digital tech.
Yeah.
And say, okay, let's have a cave troll, but the cave troll's going to move real fast. And it's going to be kind of dark. And the camera's really not going to stick on him for too long. But those times when you're like zoom in on its face, we're going to pour all of the production budget for this effect into that scene.
Yeah.
And everything else, he's just going to be a smooth stone boy.
Yeah.
It
is crazy to me that, like, that's a big part of this movie. I loved the cave troll scene. And just watching that versus, like, all the trolls in the Hobbit movies, I'm like, man, I love Cave Troll all the more, He's so near. There's the moment where the Cave Troll's like, oh, snap, I'm about to be a dead boy. My heart goes out to him, He's just a big, dumb Cave Troll who's just fighting because that's what he's supposed to do, You feel bad for him.
So you agree with Peter Jackson, is what you're saying?
What?
Have you not heard this before? I didn't know if it was in the...
They talked about it, but what are you saying? Yeah,
Peter Jackson describes that particular cave troll as probably a good guy that just fell in with the wrong crowd.
I did not see that part.
Yeah. I don't think it's in that. I think it's just in like some random interview where he's just like, I like to think of the cave troll, and he does this like thing where he like leans back and like laces his fingers like he's talking about something really serious. He's like, I like to think of him as he's really a good guy at heart. And he just kind of fell in, it's like everybody else is doing this. It's fun. No one's getting hurt. And then, he died, and now his mom's waiting up for him.
It is funny, like, watching through all those scenes. You're like, Peter, you have spent years thinking about these things. Not only, like, him making, like, the 5 years they took making these movies, also just, like, his whole life, he was like, man, one day, if I ever made these movies, this would be like, like, he spent way too much time thinking about it. And I love it, and he made great movies, but it's just funny that anyone, like, I don't know, went into so much detail about everything. But, like, everything they wanted to do for The Hobbit, it was, like, interesting to hear them talk about the process of making this movie, of, like, oh, we storyboarded everything. Like, every scene we pre-visioned and storyboarded as we were creating the art and the decorations and the visual effects, and like all of it came together. It's good.
They said that one of the little factoids I got here was it's one of the first movies, I think, along with The Matrix, where they go through and they do every scene in like really rough CG so they can show the actors, and it's like, this is kind of what I'm wanting you to do.
Yeah.
So the actors can see, okay, this is how this battle on a whole is going to play out, so I know where I need to be. But before we get too spoilery, Cody, as this is a normal episode.
Oh yeah.
Do we want to sum it up? There's a ring. They go on an adventure as a fellowship. I think that's about as good as it gets right there, right? That's the 30 seconds or less.
Yeah.
plot synopsis.
Yes.
So, Cody, how are we getting to the spoiler shire?
We're getting in the back of Gandalf's spoiler wagon.
A spoiler wagon.
The spoiler wagon.
Spoiler shire. Spoiler town. Spoilerton.
Yeah.
The spoiler.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're biting your lip, and that's what. Yeah. That means you really like it.
I noticed there's a little Wilhelm scream in the intro to this movie.
In the intro?
The prologue, I mean.
The prologue.
In the beginning, when they're like, hey, here's the whole story, here's the ring, and here's the war about it, and here's when they tried to destroy it, and they didn't, and then they, that whole thing. Was there a little baby one? I couldn't quite tell. Did you know it? It's a little baby one. It wasn't like a full, obvious Wilhelm scream,
Well, I think there were screams when Sauron was, going to town with his mace.
Yeah.
Which, okay, nerd time here, Cody. I'm going to take this, I'm going to derail it hard.
Please do.
If you want a cool, oh my gosh, cool description of a normal, I guess, mortal, but it's elf, so killable, not necessarily mortal, right?
Right.
Thing fighting something like Sauron. I guess it was Morgoth, so it's Sauron's former boss. Now, I don't know. I haven't finished Silmarillion. I'm assumed dead or destroyed, or maybe he's a mouse somewhere. I don't know. There's a story in there where this elf prince dude gets really upset with Morgoth for doing something bad, as he does. He's a bad guy. Mm-hmm. So he rides up to Morgoth's impenetrable fortress, which makes Durthang look like a pile of twigs, apparently. Or not Durthang, Barad-dûr.
Barad-dûr.
Because it's just a mountain with a door in it. It's impossible to get into. And he just beats on the door and challenges Morgoth to one-on-one combat and he's like, you're a coward if you don't come out here. And he just sits out there for 2 days, spewing just awful stuff. And he comes out and he's the size of 3 buildings stacked on top of each other, and they freaking fight. And it's it is cool. I'm I want a movie made out of this fight scene.
What if they did a Silmarillion series where they took the 6 best stories from Silmarillion and made them into hour-long episodes for... Because I know Amazon is supposed to be doing their Lord of the Rings series where it's we're going to do Lord of the Rings stories, but not from the books, but about some of the characters.
Here's what I think they could do.
What could they do?
think they could do seasons for the good stories. I think that'd be better than an hour-long episode, because some of them are really good and they are very dense. But that one's just cool because it's a lot of he's fighting and everybody's watching, and they're like, "You're not dead immediately." But it's very cool, and after I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" It made me feel the whole what's Isildur's father's name? I know you know, Cody. I have it right here. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I've got it. But anyway, his daddy, Elendil.
Uh-huh.
You like that? Yeah. He, him going up and fighting, and then Isildur's sitting there. It makes it oh man, this is it's death to go up against this guy. Because everybody's like, oh, the ring makes him powerful. It's no, not really. I mean, he is a god of that world.
Yeah.
But
a naughty god.
He's very naughty because Morgoth was the original naughty god. And then he was Morgoth, I'll go with you. And then, fun fact, another nerd fact, Sauron is a little bee in the Silmarillion.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's this. He is Wormtongue in the Silmarillion.
Really?
He's Nyeh. He surrenders constantly. He runs away all the time.
Interesting.
He's a little snake.
I didn't know that.
I recommend it. Let's do a Silmarillion podcast right now. Oh. It's dense. It's not great. There's some parts that you're oh boy. Anyway, Back to the great movie that we watched.
I had never seen the extended editions. This is my maiden voyage on them. I grew up watching the theatrical cuts of them
Like a
repeatedly.
pleb.
Yes. Anyway, so I noticed a lot of differences, a lot of things. Like in this one, they've got a little more about the hobbits. They like concerning hobbits. They explain about them, and it made me real happy to see the hobbits. And I don't know, there were some good bits. They're like, people say that we just like to eat food, and that's not true. We also love to drink ale all the time. You're like, yeah, this is the best. Hobbits are the best. They just sit around and they got their pigs in their garden, and they just love it. They just love life, you know. I also, watching this movie, oh, holy cow, Gandalf looks like a young buck in this movie. After watching The Hobbit, which is like, 10 years later, 10 years plus a little bit later, you're like, oh, Ian McKellen, you're looking fit. You're looking,
Yeah.
It's like, didn't realize how much older he looks.
Yeah. There's a fun fact for you. So, the only person in the movies who actually met Tolkien, right? We've discussed this, you and I, was Christopher Lee. Mm-hmm. Who was told by Tolkien, if they ever make a movie, I want you to play Gandalf. Mm-hmm. And then he got there, the first thing he says to Ian McKellen, he wanted me to play Gandalf. And then they became friends. Like you said, you saw that. It's in the thing. Didn't you? Did you say
I think so, yeah.
It's in the thing.
I do recall.
They became fast friends. But it's funny because in my little fact sheet, it says the same thing where it's like, he's like, but I wanted to be You're right, I'm too old. Like, that's how it went. He's like, but yeah, you're right. There's fight scenes with Gandalf.
Also, like, not that Christopher Lee would have been a bad job with Gandalf, but Christopher Lee is such a great voice for Sauron, like that.
Oh, yeah.
For Saruman, where he's got that, like, big, boomy voice of, like, oh, yeah, I can give a big speech to a bunch of orcs, or I can,
Plus, I think, like, in The Hobbit, he looks like a bad guy immediately.
Uh-huh.
But it's also because he's 90 years old and falling apart.
Yeah.
But this one, I feel like from the first time you see him, like, you see him go through the bad guy, like, good guy to bad guy transformation, I feel like.
Yeah, you see him, you're like, oh, yeah, it's that guy I trust. Gandalf trusts him. He's ahead of their order. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
And then between, like, the first and second movie, you're like, oh, no.
Well, even in this one,
Well, no, you're right in this one, but it's like,
yeah,
you do see, like, the progression of him getting worse. Degression? Whatever.
Yeah. So I like that, and I think he's perfect for that. As a former Bond villain, he knows how to play villains.
He does. As a former Dracula, yes.
As a former everything. The guy was everything in every movie for
as a former
50 years.
Mycroft Holmes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My other favorite part of this movie, remember the Hobbit babies?
Yes.
Oh. Melt your little heart, little Hobbit babies, listening to Bilbo's tale about the dragon. It, it's the best. There's even, like, the thing is, there's the Hobbit babies, and there's two super cute Hobbit babies. And even in the credits, I noticed they were, like, cute Hobbit babies. And then there's, like, the two that were, like, especially cute. You're like, you rascals. Those other Hobbit babies suck. I didn't even notice the not cute Hobbit babies until I saw the credits. Where I was like, there's only two cute ones. Then when they replayed part of the scene, I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. The rest of them are dumb.
They're dumb. And
They're just random babies.
And I hate them.
Can
hit me? Don't hold back.
Peter Jackson?
Yeah.
Has a cameo in every movie, but in this first one.
Yeah. Say his name. Say it.
Carrot Guy.
Oh, yeah.
Which he reprises in Desolation of Smaug. I think we talked about it in the Desolation of Smaug episode, too, didn't we? Where he has the carrot in this one. Mm-hmm. And then a decade later? 2 decades later? No, a decade later.
Yeah.
15 years later. 300 years later. Well, however long later, takes a bite out of the carrot.
Yeah, it does.
So, here's what I say. This is the question I have for you. He has the carrot.
Yeah. We're talking about Carrot Guy?
Carrot Guy.
Yeah.
When they're going into Bree.
Yeah.
He takes a bite out of the carrot when Gandalf is meeting Thorin in Bree. So this is my theory. Gandalf was freaking in Bree meeting with Thorin, and he just left them all to die. That's what I think.
Wow.
60 years in the past.
This conspiracy goes deep.
Or
He's a
80
wizard, right?
80
Time
years.
travel can't be beyond him.
Yeah. He's trying to say that he's trapped in Orthonk, which is a very... I'm glad they cut that name out of the movies completely.
Orthonk.
Because it's like... All right. You know? It doesn't sound like... It sounds like you're pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah.
But that's how it's pronounced, and it drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this was a book written by a linguist. Literally a language professor.
A man who studies ancient languages.
And he went with Orthonk. For the same... It's the same culture that named it Orthonk is the one that, like, called their cities Minas Tirith and Minas, not Morgul. Morgul was that, but Minas means city, and then they had like all these things.
Yeah,
they had guys named like Elendil and Ecthelion and things like all that, and then it's like, what's the name?
Orthonk.
Orthonk, and I'm like, why?
OJR. Also, here's what I want. Here's what I want out of this movie. I want a shoot-off movie, all right? I want to do a little shoot-off project all about the Sackville Bagginses, all right? In the extended edition, they had like 5 shots of the Sackville Bagginses rooting around, doing whatever.
The rooting around is the perfect term for whatever they're doing.
I just want, not even a movie, just like a 20-minute short film about like what they're all about, you know? Like what they're doing in between scenes. They're going abouts. That's what the people want, Peter Jackson. I need a trilogy of for the Sackville Bagginses.
I mean, they're the worst, but also possibly the best. Probably not. But
I did like it's just the heritage of all the hobbits, and they've all got their names, and they're just like, yeah.
So, I've seen a thing, Cody.
Talk to me.
In my fact sheets, I was told there are photos of a man dressed as Aragorn. Wow. Yeah, no, they made the right choice here in this casting decision.
Did you find the original Aragorn?
Yes.
So I saw that in the making of thing. They talked about how they had another person playing Strider for like a few weeks, and it just wasn't working out. And then they called Viggo Mortensen. They were like, "Hey, do you want to come on a plane tomorrow and fly to New Zealand and shoot this movie that's going to take a couple of years?"
Yeah, and did they talk about it was like it was his daughter or something convinced him?
It was his son.
His son?
He had never read Lord of the Rings. His son loved Lord of the Rings and was like, "You have to." He like explained the whole thing to him. He's like, "Okay, here's who the guy is. He does this. You have to go do it." Like,
I remember I read a whole thing too where he's just like he thought he was hitting like a bit part or something like that, and then he's like, "Yeah," the guy's like Aragorn, and he's like, "What?" He like freaking out because he thought he was just playing like some extra.
Well, in the making of, they don't say who the original actor was. They say, which is very polite and like New Zealander of them to like not call him out. But I want to know, who was it? Do you know?
Stuart Townsend.
Is he just a random Kiwi?
He's an Irish actor. You will probably recognize him when you see a picture of him. He's very much like.
Oh, no way. I know this dude.
You do. That's why I was like, you'll know him when you see him.
I was in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Was he? Is he the guy who plays Dorian Gray?
I don't know. I recognize his face, but I'm looking at his credits. I haven't seen any of these.
A lot of vampire movies, I bet, isn't it?
Definitely one or two. Yeah.
Did you see this picture yet?
Show me.
So there's a picture of him, supposedly like in makeup and dressed up as Aragorn.
I don't like it. He is not daddy.
He's not daddy. He's a young boy.
That's the problem.
He's definitely not old enough. But that's for the next movie. You look at him too, and he just
is
like
he
one.
Married to Charlize Theron? No, he can't be. They're in a lot of pictures together. Okay. Anyway, you know they should have got to play Aragorn.
Daddy.
Charlize Theron.
All right. He was, from 2001 to 2010, married to Charlize Theron.
Oh.
Now he's married to, or partnered, I don't know if married, partner, whatever, to Agatha Area.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever that is.
Yeah, we all know her and love her or him.
It's a girl, I think.
Yeah. Agatha's the name of the psychic gym leader in Pokemon, and she is an old lady, so...
Boom.
Nailed it.
I just like someone has photoshopped his face onto... Maybe it's not photoshopped, but it is him doing a sexy lip lick, which is how I knew I recognized him, because I've seen him do that in movies. And that is photoshopped onto Viggo Mortensen.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's I kind of want it, but in like a spoof.
Piece of art.
That's what he looks like. He looks like the person you'd cast in a spoof of these movies.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something I wanted to bring up when you were talking about The Hobbit earlier.
Yeah.
Because The Hobbit, we know from reading things of that, how many, like, there was no time. They had to go with their first draft on everything.
Yeah.
But especially if you watch the making of this, everything in the Lord of the Rings trilogy is like fifth draft.
Yeah.
At least.
Right.
Like, every actor is not the first pick. Not the first actor. They're like, you? No. Maybe you? No. Maybe you? Nah. Maybe you? Nope, this other guy. No, Boog. Oh, that scared him.
Oh, poor Boog.
I moved the backpack.
Doesn't have any claws. He can't do no harm.
I know he's going to wear a hole in it, though. He's going to town.
Oh, you can
there.
see on my speakers where he rubs his cheek against on like the lower part. You can't see now, it's too dark, but you can see there's little gray spots where he rubs his cheek all over my speakers.
One day I'll see it. I swear it, and I would promise you.
Yeah, it's interesting because everything goes through so many processes where, like, they have artists who draw everything draft after draft after draft till they narrow it down, and then they have people that design the costumes and then the weapons, and then they're always rewriting the script and, like, refining it as they go. But, like, I always thought these ones were all planned out beforehand. And they did all the planning beforehand, but also there was so much to do that they were still redrafting and rewriting all the time as they shot it, just like they were with The Hobbit, but they didn't have the years of prep beforehand to, like, make it manageable, you know?
Yeah, it's like almost like Peter Jackson almost killed himself with how much he worked, and he almost died making these films.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. I like them a lot. It's just, it shows, like, Peter Jackson, I think, is a master at making movies and stuff if he has the time and to redo everything.
Well, it's interesting, too, because, like, his credits before Lord of the Rings were, like, these weird indie thriller comedy sci-fi. Like, they were weird movies, and I haven't seen them, but just, like, reading, like, the treatments and, like, looking at the posters, like, this is weird and different, but it's, like, when you give him, like, the Bible of a fantasy book, and he has, like, great source material, he's like, oh, yeah, I can adapt this, you know? It's interesting. I'm almost curious enough to, like, watch one of those movies, because it's like, well, he also, like, redid King Kong. I've heard The Lovely Bones is good, but, like, not everyone loved it, so, but that's supposed to be a good book, so I'm curious. Like, I'm kind of curious to see more of his movies, but also none of them are going to be better than Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yeah. I've heard people say, like, he's faithful to a fault a lot of the times. Like, where you should have done something a little differently, sometimes he won't.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the benefit of Lord of the Rings is because, you know, there's 3 writers involved. There's, like, him, his wife, and, like, Philippa Boyens, who all wrote it together, you know? It's like he didn't do the heavy lifting of the writing, but he helped with the writing, and he didn't do all the heavy lifting of the production design, but he helped, like, his vision was involved in every aspect of it. So, like, there was so much collaboration with all these other artists working on it, you know?
Yeah, which
so it made for, like, a great...
There's a lot to be said for having, like, one person who everything runs by, even if they just, like, kind of wave 90% of it off. Like, the MCU is, I think, the biggest, most successful example of it with, was it Kevin Feige?
Yeah.
Everything had to pass every at least major thing, he was, okay.
Yeah.
It's still, like, an MCU movie, you know.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it's interesting because some of the movies, especially, like, around Endgame, where they're like, no one knows Endgame, but you can't end your movie that way. And I can't tell you why, but it's related to what we have to do in Endgame. Like, oh, gosh, okay. And, like, having to work around all that. It's interesting.
Yeah, just, like, even if, like, you have, like, a lot of people were like, oh, Ragnarok ended a certain way, and that, you know, or Endgame, yeah, or Infinity War kind of like stomped on that. And it's like, yeah, but he did have them be like, okay, but you need to add this thing in as the teaser so it leads into Infinity War.
Yeah.
You know, you can't end it this way, the way that like, so kind of letting them do their own thing, but pulling everything so that it merges in the end, you know?
Yeah.
And like seeing the whole scope so that you can drop things throughout the whole storyline. But yeah, I mean, there's little things even like where there's lines throughout the movies that are just the exact same as in the books, just rearranged.
Yeah, or it's like we gave this really important line to someone else because it needed to be said, you know, but we didn't have that scene written in the movie, so we just put it somewhere else.
Yeah. Or even just cool lines, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Frodo won't close a door. Am I right? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
So like he comes Bilbo's party, Bilbo's disappeared and then says goodbye and leaves the ring, and Frodo walks in the door, doesn't close it, just like walks in and is like, huh, this is how houses work. Come on, Frodo. Am I right?
Well, you're raising a hole. Let's talk about that ring not bouncing though.
Oh, the sound effect of the ring falling on the ground, just that tonk, tonk. You know? I want that. That should be like my text alert sound.
Yes.
I need to find that.
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. I know they magnetized the floor, which I had a question of, and then I saw it immediately. I think before the movie was even done.
Yeah.
But how big was that ring they dropped to get that thud? Because that was a thud. Mm-hmm. That wasn't like, oh, I dropped a ring. They must have dropped one of those like 6-inch rings.
Yeah.
That's got some meat to it. You know?
They had like all kinds of different scales of the ring, where it's like, okay, this is a big ring, so it looks small when the Hobbit's holding. You know, like they had all the different versions of it. And then like one of the production designers, they were practicing. They're doing like run throughs of the scene before they even got like the cast there. And they ended up using like his ring as like a model for the One Ring, because they were like, it's kind of interesting how it's got these whatevers, and so I was like, oh yeah, basically my ring is the One Ring, which is kind of cool. Yeah, or just like his wedding band.
Mine too.
Yours too.
Have we ever addressed the fact that my actual real wedding ring is the One Ring? On this podcast,
probably not, but it explains like the reign and dominance of our podcast.
Yes. My wedding ring is the One Ring, and my wife's is Ninya. I almost didn't remember, but then I remembered it. It is Ninya Galadriel's ring of power, because we're the super couple of Sauron and Galadriel that everybody wanted to see. Not this Celeborn garbage.
Yeah, Celeborn. No one. Why is he even there? You know.
No, he talks slow and he wants to speak to Gandalf. That's what I know.
I learned something fun about that scene. I did not know this. You knew this already, I'm sure. Film is shot 24 frames per second. Mm-hmm. It's like the standard video is 30 frames per second. They shot that sequence in 33 frames per second to make it seem all ethereal and dreamy.
Yeah.
Which is funny when you think about them shooting The Hobbit in, like, was it 45 frames per second?
It was something ridiculous.
60 frames per second, something ridiculous.
It wasn't 60, it was...
But it was like 48 or 44.
48,
48.
Yeah. And then, they filmed certain barrel sequences at 60 frames per second. Or 120? I don't know. It was bad. This is interesting. Since you brought up The Hobbit and the 60 frames per second parts, where they filmed it on a GoPro... That part where they're escaping in the barrels, they're in the fight there.
Are you telling me a fun fact about...
No. It's about this movie.
All right, talk to me.
So when they were leaving Moria, here there was a plan to have a whole fight scene where they ran into the forest and the elves just took out, just murked all the orcs, all the dorks, you know? And there was going to be a big battle sequence at a river where they came in, right?
Yeah.
Or when they were chasing them. Yeah, that's what it was. When they were chasing them after they left Lorien.
Okay.
That's what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So they're floating down the river, and the elves were just going to be, like, killing the orcs as they were going and, like, fighting them to keep them off of the Fellowship.
Yeah.
But there was a big rainstorm, and it washed away their set, so they couldn't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Their set just got washed away.
Oh, that's crazy.
Dead.
It is crazy. Like, I talked about how digital this movie is, but like, because they root it all in like physical sets, they're able to blend it so well and make it look so good. Where sometimes it's like, oh, we have the actual set, we just put blue screens up so we can make the sky and whatever we needed to all blend together. That's really neat.
And they did a lot of like with bigatures, as they called them.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with bigots. Bigatures, which are giant miniatures.
These are pictures of bigots.
Yeah. No, those are picatures.
Okay, Saruman. We already talked about it a little bit. Say whatever you will about him, alright? Maybe he's a bad dude. Maybe he shouldn't have tried to team up with Sauron and create an orc army and wipe out the Empire of Men. Here's what he does, okay? Here's the good thing we can all say about Saruman. The man can create a vibe. When you arrive at Isengard and you go into his tower, it's like, this is some decor, alright? This is an aesthetic. It's like, and then his staff is the same shape as his tower. You're like, you got this big white robe, you got this big black tower, you got this big,
You got this big swinging army, You got all the things.
It's a whole vibe. I learned that like they made that by, it's like all this like black lacquer stuff they put over it, spray over everything, and then they cover it in like glass so that it's like reflective. Like it's crazy the way they built those sets. They're so cool.
Yeah, I mean they nailed the description of Orthunk in the books. I think they nailed it because they based the bottom of it, like they took the base of it straight from a famous painting of it that's on the cover of the book, and then kind of went their own way. And
one of their lead production designers is the painter of that painting.
Yeah.
So it's like that key. So Peter Jackson was like, I just wanted to see the rest of the tower. So I hired the painter who made it.
Yeah.
And had him paint the rest of the tower, and then we made it.
Yeah. Which I was like, did they really just take it? And I looked up the painting and was like, oh my gosh, they absolutely did.
They're like, here's the bottom third, and now let's do the rest.
Yeah. And I like it a lot. I read further in the Stuart Townsend fact.
You better.
And it lists...
You better. You tell me right now. Is he in Lost Boys? What is it?
No. So it said he was there for a few days, and then he was like, "You're too young." Replaced him. But they have some of the people people he wanted, and people who auditioned, and people who were offered the role.
Okay.
So he originally wanted Russell Crowe or Daniel Day-Lewis for the part.
Oh, Daniel Day-Lewis? That would be crazy.
Would it?
That would have been crazy.
Continue. Here's what I know. He's a famous Victorian era dressmaker. And that's what he is. He is nothing else. I don't know what other movie he's in, because usually when I'm like, that's Daniel Day-Lewis, you know what I find out? Nope. Is Ralph Fiennes. That's what I find. They don't look alike, but it happens.
That's the perfect person to confuse him with. Well, I just watched There Will Be Blood a couple weeks ago. That's another one he's in. You're like, oh, it's just him with a big black mustache, and he's an oil baron. He's a man, and he would have done a great job. Yeah. But
not Viggo Mortensen.
Here's the thing about the difference. Dan Day-Lewis, he's this madness method actor. Viggo Mortensen is also kind of a method actor, but he's the humblest, sweetest of all the boys. And so he's captured. When he interviews, he talks so soft, and he takes it all to heart, and he's the soft, sweet daddy that we don't even deserve.
Didn't he read the book on the plane to be in the movie?
Something like that. Because I know he hadn't read it. He's like, oh, better get going.
Yeah, I know he at least started it, and then by the time they landed, he's like, well, I'm glad I said yes to that.
Yeah.
Or something. There's something like that. There's somebody that's in the movies had that experience, I know.
It was him or Sean Bean, I think.
Yeah. Sean Bean, he may have been one of the super crazy nerds about it.
Yeah.
We all know the biggest nerd about it is Christopher Lee. Read all 3 books every single year.
From the time it was published?
Yes.
Until he died.
Yes.
Yeah.
Personal friend of the author.
Yeah, it's like 50 years.
Yeah. So Russell Crowe, Daniel Day-Lewis. Nicolas Cage was offered the role of Aragorn.
Nick Cage. Nicholas Coppola.
I don't think
Francis
the movie
Ford
would be
Coppola's nephew.
good. I don't think it would be as good had he said yes.
It would have been just as entertaining for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it would have probably made a bunch of money, but it would not have lasted
Nick
as long.
Cage isn't a bad actor. It's just he's, you know, when fruit is too ripe.
Yeah,
It's Nick Cage. I think he peaked pretty early, and he's just been over ripening for the last 20 years, and that's the Nick Cage we have and know now.
I think he would have gone too far. He would have been.
And
too
now
much.
he's like fermenting, you know, where you're like, okay, now I like this. Now
Yeah.
it's good for a different reason.
Well, it's like now he's in movies where you want him to be a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But he definitely would have been a little bit too much. He would have been like, no, that's in the next movie. I'm trying to think of a line. You know, he would have said everything like, you know?
way too grumbly and breathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel auditioned.
Stop.
He's a super.
Oh, that would have been awful. Who? Let's use
Yes. So, oh yeah.
What?
So it's I think what is it? Oh, it's a Triple X. I think it's the one where he plays Xander Cage, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you knew this. This may be a side fun fact that you may not know. Vin Diesel is a super nerd. He plays D&D. He's read all the nerd books. He's
Really?
read Dune and Lord of the Rings and all, like, probably read every Dune book, not just Dune.
Yeah.
Probably read the Silmarillion more than once. He's a crazy super nerd. Apparently Xander Cage has Melkor tattooed across his chest.
From what?
So Melkor, here we go. Melkor, the name of Sauron's master. It's
Oh my
another. So it's another, another name or like an in between of.
Vin. He's just a
Morgoth.
puzzle. He's just a puzzle with infinite pieces.
Yeah, Melkor's a bad guy. I can't remember if he is Morgoth or if he's below Morgoth. I don't know, but he's a bad boy. I know that, and that's what he has tattooed across his chest as a bad guy. Anyway. Or as a not bad guy. I don't know what Xander Cage is. Anyway, that's for a different series.
That's for our Triple X franchise review. Anyone else? Anyone else I should know that was
So
offered or
they have some
auditioned?
other casting preferences below here, okay? Here we go, real quick. Other casting preferences include Jeremy Irons as Saruman.
I don't know.
I'll let that sink in. I like that a little bit. I
Who
like
is
that.
it?
Jeremy Irons? I'll let you look that up while I go on. Lucy Lawless as Galadriel. That would not have been as good. Liam Neeson as Boromir. I could see that being dope. But,
Oh, that would have been cool.
we got Ned Stark instead, and he's beautiful. And David Bowie as Elrond, which what? Can we?
Give it to me.
I want it.
I mean,
Let's go back in time.
David Bowie is a wonderful man. He's not a better actor than Hugo Weaving, so good for them for picking Hugo. But I would have liked it. I would have been into it.
To play like in a
He's
David
an elf.
Bowie-
Like, there's a reason he's the Goblin King in Labyrinth. Like,
you know what David Bowie, like if you're like, I want David Bowie in there, because I bet you David Bowie was probably a fan of the books.
Yeah.
So you probably could have gotten him in any role as long as it was either small enough
have
that you could.
have him be Galadriel's husband.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's who he needs to
He would have been perfect as Celeborn.
Oh, man.
Because it would have been small enough that you could have been like, hey, can you want to come by? It's not like you're going to have a hard time getting someone rich and famous enough to go wherever they want to come to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're just like, hey, next time you're in the neighborhood, if you want to stop by, I got the makeup for Celeborn all ready for you. And he'd be like, all right.
Yeah. Wow.
David Bowie famously in a SpongeBob episode, but not in The Lord of the Rings.
Famously in a SpongeBob episode?
You know the episode where they go to Atlantis?
I haven't seen that one. Wait. The one where they with the burger contest with the king?
No. It's one where they find the other half of this coin of Atlantis thing.
No, I haven't
Medallion
seen
of
that one.
Atlantis, and they go on a Volkswagen Beetle that's powered by song. Or not Beetle, a Volkswagen bus.
I haven't seen that one.
Anyway, the ruler is Lord Royal Highness, or LR8 for short. That's right, yep. He's voiced by David Bowie.
Yeah, David. He's gone too soon.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do we have now? All we've got is what's-his-face from Flight of the Conchords.
All we have.
He's the... We just got,
He's the what?
who's that guy? Jermaine Clements.
Jermaine Clement, yeah.
He's all we've got now. Jermaine Clements in makeup. But yeah, I mean, that's I think, a quick little peek through here. Yep.
That's awesome. Another detail I love about this movie, Frodo's fingernails. Oh,
You have a
give them
coke
to
nails?
me.
Oh, you like them?
You know when he goes to he's tempted to put on the ring and they show it and his fingernails are so dirty, you're like, yeah, he's been out traveling for months. Of course his fingernails are gonna be grubby little. And then all the reflections they do in the ring, like when Frodo's reading the writing on the ring, and then like the Elvish is reflecting back on his face.
Oh, that's so good.
It's such a cool. And then they do all the background like voices whenever they're like focusing on the ring. You know, it's like the ring. It's so good.
I think, what is it the voices are? They have it's like 6 different languages reading the ring or something?
Yeah, there's different ones. I know a lot of it is like, what's black speech or whatever, the Mordor language, and yeah, they do different ones though.
Because I'm pretty sure it's more, I don't know. I thought I saw somewhere that it's more than just black speech, but that's like the top one, and then it goes down.
The gatekeeper. So the hobbits have to go to Bree, to the prancing pony.
Yeah.
Worst gatekeeper ever. Am I right?
Well,
It's middle of the night, so he's gotta ask questions after dark, right? He's like, "Hey, what's your name? What are you doing here?" They're like, "We're trying to go to the inn. My name is made up name." He's like, "All right." Like, just what's the point of him being there? He's basically just like, "Hey, are you a lizard man?" No. All right, come on in.
Well, here's the thing.
What?
I'm pretty sure the whole point of it being there is that they have to close the gate and they need someone there to open it if people show up. Because I think they're keeping out wolves in the books. Anyway.
It's just funny. Like, well, you don't have to ask questions. It's just funny. It's like asking questions that don't even matter or anything. He's like, "What are you doing here?" "I'm trying to go to the inn." "What's your name?" Underhill." You're like, all right, don't get snappy with me. You're like, "What? I don't."
Well, it's also...
Then he just gets crunched by the gate.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you remember the rest of that part of the book with the gate and everything, but I mean the rest of their wall is a hedge.
Oh, really?
Yes, I mean it's really not an impenetrable barrier to people that if like people want to get in, it's supposed to keep the forest out, and because the trees tried to kill them at one point, so they hacked up all the trees and built the hedge. And then the wolves, which apparently are a big problem, or were at one point. There's a part of the book I remember where they're like, and this is the history of the war with the wolves. And I was like, all right, Tolkien. I know what's coming. I've seen the movies. Let's pick up the pace. And then we hit Tom Bombadil, and I was like, oh boy, I like this guy. I hated him, and then I loved him, and I feel like that's what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
He puts the ring on, Cody. Spoilers for Tom Bombadil. He puts the ring on and nothing happens, which is the most terrifying thing I've ever read in a book, knowing the history of the ring and what it is.
That's crazy.
He like flicks it up in the air, puts it on. He's like, that's fun. And then flicks it over to him. And it's like, what are you? Solve the problem here, man. You have the power.
Yeah.
They also almost get killed by wraiths. And he comes up and he's like, you rascals, and destroys the wraiths and gives them ancient swords from Narnia or something, Numenor.
I don't remember any of it. I was too young. I was too pure when I read.
Here's the thing: they talk a lot about them going through and meeting up with some elves and doing some BS, and then they're like, "Here's Tom Bombadil. He put on the ring. His horse's name is Fatty Lumpkin. Isn't that special?" All right, we're moving past him. It's like, well, now hold on now. Let's circle back to the deity living next door to the hobbits.
You know what else I realized watching this movie? It's no wonder that the hobbits don't hang out with like humans, Because all anyone ever does is talk about how short they are. Like, yeah, those little dorky, like, half-size, look like a little kid over there. You seen them? Like, and you're like, all you do is point out how short the hobbits are all the time. You guys are jerks. Like, if I were a hobbit, I'd make my own little village, too. I wouldn't deal with anyone else.
Yeah, you just move out and you do. You're like
the worst. All the like everybody all the time. But for real,
yes.
How does Cave Troll look so good? I know you already discussed it and explained it, but explain it again. It looks great.
They use shadows.
It was from 20 years ago. It looks great.
Shadow.
It really does. It works well. I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved all of it.
You remember when in the Hobbit movies there was a sequence that looked like it was out of a Disney park ride?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like, right? Like you're in a ride and it's doing the whoa, and the thing kind of wiggles.
Something squirts you with water and you're like,
yeah,
oh, big splash. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I don't know when the Hobbit movies came out. Who cares? Decade or more before that, they did a Cave Troll and made it look better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
There's the shadows and the darkness and such. Because you got some people like James Cameron who want to do an effect, and they're like, sometimes they're like, let's hide it well. And then they're like, in Avatar, where he's like, I don't think an aside.
Yeah.
I don't think James Cameron made Avatar to be the highest grossing film ever made at the time. I think he made it to be like, look at all this cool ocean stuff that I made look like aliens.
Yeah.
And then move on after
it's like,
making
wouldn't it be fun if we did this totally crazy thing where we made everyone CG the whole time? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, I think he made it because he's
Could
like,
someone give me a plot?
Could.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think it was very much I think we could do this and it'll
Can
probably
they ride dragons? All right, cool.
Yeah,
I'm on board.
Dragons. Thank you.
Man.
Anyway, but yeah, no, this is an example of, all right, well, it doesn't look great, so let's make it look good.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was interesting, like they talk about how, so the two ladies do most of the screenwriting, and then Peter Jackson helps some, but they're like, yeah, we're terrible at the action stuff, so it's always like, we write all the dialogue and all these lines and all the exposition, and then we hit a point where they're like, and then they fight. And then that's when Peter Jackson's like, sweet, let me storyboard all this stuff. And like, that's even just like from the drawings, he got the ideas of like, oh, there'll be this bridge you have to descend, and then, it's cracked, so it'll break. And then, it's like 20 minutes of action of just like Peter Jackson be like, sweet, here's the cool action we're going to do. And they do like the whole thing. So it's like, oh, it's so crazy. You have these two ladies doing all the writing and the hard work. And then Peter Jackson's like, I can make a sweet orc fight, underground in a mine. Like, let's do it.
Did it cover the bridge breaking or the stairs breaking in the making of where they're like, it's 2 sentences I think in the book, and then one of the guys was like, but what if the stairs crack? And he's like, all right, I guess we're making a sequence.
But like, it's so different, Fellowship of the Ring versus the Hobbit, because like, remember the Hobbit when they're in the first one, when they're in the cave and there's the Goblin King and they're like using the ladder to knock over all the dwarves, and it's all these like wide shots of like CG dwarves bouncing down hills and rolling about and doing all their stuff.
Yeah.
And then in this one, it's like a 5-minute sequence of them getting down this bridge that's slowly breaking, and it's all intense and cool. And she's like,
yeah, there's the
so
orcs shooting at them.
Yeah, the arrows coming at them. There's like
them.
a POV shot of an arrow that doesn't look dumb. You're like, it's all so good. I don't know. It's just like the stark difference between the two of like when they had the time to do it and focus on the practical stuff versus when they were like, let's just computer generate this. We got to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, controversial opinion. I think that's the only time they've ever followed an arrow in any movie, and it hasn't looked dumb, and it has been exactly as intense as the filmmaker intended.
Yeah,
because you're like, I just went through that orc's face.
Yeah,
that was like awesome.
And it emphasizes how good a shot Legolas is too. You know, which is just like a fun thing throughout.
It also does the thing like theirs are like half of their arrows aren't even making it close to them.
Right,
and then
and they're
his,
like really. And then they're like these
stone.
like short, crappy arrows, that are like bouncing off of things, and his just rocket.
And it goes through its skull and digs into the rock. Yeah. And it's like, oh. Yeah. Yeah, he's an elf and they are orcs, and it is he is better. Because it's him Is he the only one shooting back, or was it him and
Aragorn shoots a couple
Aragorn?
back, I
Yeah,
think.
okay.
Yeah.
But Aragorn's also a Dunedain ranger. Like, he's on par with elves for most things.
Yeah, he's not.
So it's like these two
your average
peak
mortal man.
in the world things, and it's like, oh wow, you guys.
Yeah.
There's a reason you can take on 100 things, whereas in like The Hobbit or even in other movies where they're like, they just say like we can take on 100 dudes, and you're like, I don't think you could.
I think
And
you
in
can
this
take
one,
on
it's like
10 dudes. You can do 10.
Yeah.
100.
But in this one, yeah.
I did like one thing I liked about watching this and seeing the extended edition. Like, there was a lot of things they explained a little more. There was lore and stuff I didn't know about. Like, I didn't know Aragorn was, had like a special thing where he was. I didn't realize he wasn't just a dude. I didn't know he had like special long life and that whole thing.
Yeah. He's one of the Dunedain.
It's fun.
I have a fact about the cave troll fight.
Tell me.
I'm surprised in my facts. My facts surprise me sometimes, Cody. So, the blocking of the cave troll fight was done by rigging a wooden camera prop that moves a virtual one. Peter Jackson would then operate his camera and look through what it saw using a VR visor and film the preliminary animation to block out the scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's like the basis of what James Cameron actually, it says what like he used in Avatar.
Really?
And how he filmed it. But this is the first time someone did it.
That's crazy.
James Cameron out here stealing Peter Jackson's ideas.
James Cameron, how did you do this? I did see something about it because he talked about like the pre-visualization they do, where it's like, oh yeah, all these scenes before the actors ever get on set, we have a CG model of all of it, and we have where it's going to go and what it's going to look like, and it explains why the movie looks so good, and it's like this epic fantasy tale.
Yeah, and it's like, the amount of work they put into it, it really does show. And it's like,
I think it makes sense why it's like, I don't know, no fantasy thing is quite compared to it since it came out, because no one has put in not just the budget, but the time. Because like people throw this much money at movies, but they do it all where it's just like, oh yeah, all of our budget's going into either big name actors or CG. Whereas this one, it's like they did all that, and they also spent years creating everything and physical props, and I don't know. It's the vision. And I think the other thing is, I mean, obviously they had the source material, right? Like they had this 1,000-page novel and all these supporting lore and other things he's created, J.R.R. Tolkien's created around it to like inform their vision. Yeah. There aren't a lot of properties quite like that.
Yeah, I mean, it must like. I wonder how it is coming into a movie where someone's made like detailed out any question you would have.
Mm-hmm.
Like to the nth degree. But like you're talking about the budget. So this has like the budget for each movie broken down, which is difficult to find the bits because they were so intermingled.
Yeah.
But so what do you think this one has here? Which I trust this number here. I trust it.
The budget for this movie?
Yeah. I'll remind you, 3.5 hours long.
Is it 200 million?
Nope.
What is it?
$93 million.
That's crazy.
They did this movie for not much.
That's crazy.
Not much, Cody.
It's just the amount of sets they built, even, and the computer effects they had, and the art, like all the armor's practical. It seems like it should be so much more.
Yeah. Did you know? Just a quick aside.
Tell me.
As these are fun things that I wanted to say. Everybody's like, oh, the Lord of the Rings. It's an allegory for like this or like World War II, and it's the nuclear power. Tolkien's like, I hate allegory, and I hate all of you, and you're dumb.
Yeah, they talked about that a little bit in the document thing. They're like, no, it's not an allegory. What do they call it? I forget. It's not an allegory. I forget what they call it.
Yeah.
But it's like it's parallel. Like you can, because it's not based on any one particular thing, you can draw parallels to World War II. but it isn't an allegory for World War II. There's no direct one-to-one for anything because it is its own legend, it's its own myth, it's its own lore, it's its own history that you could, because it's literature, relate to anything, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Just one thing. It's its own thing, and because it's made well, it'll, you can extract meaning out of it.
Yeah, which even Tolkien was like, he was like, I'm not going to deny that there are themes from like World War I to World War II and all that. He's like, because I lived through those, I fought in World War I, alive during World War II.
Yeah.
But it's not meant to be that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I like that.
It is cool.
It's good stuff. Oh, it's so good. I had another thing real quick here, but I mean, there's more. So many facts. Tell me another fact from you or a note. I don't know. It doesn't have to be a fun fact.
Well, I'm certainly out of notes.
No.
I know. But, fun fact, I liked this movie. I did really appreciate watching the extended edition and seeing more of it. And, like, you get to see Galadriel giving her gifts at Lothlorien. And, they share how it's like, okay, we didn't just add in the deleted scenes. We revisited everything, right? We added in all this extra footage we had. We created a new score for all of it. Like, it was really, really amazing with what they did to make the extended edition.
Yeah.
And add what they added.
Yeah, because, I mean, you read the thing where it's not just one. It's not like, oh, there's 30 minutes of, like,
extra footage.
5-minute scenes, like 6 5-minute scenes added in. It's like a few seconds here, an extra, like...
There's very few that are just extra scenes. There's, like, the Lothlorien thing, and everything else is like, oh, here's extra bits.
Yeah.
Pieced in, woven in throughout the movie.
I took 3 notes. I found them. I didn't think I took any notes.
Uh-huh.
I took 3.
Yeah.
Can I share them with you?
Please, I'd be honored.
I have...
Boog has a cat visitor on the other side of the window.
Boog the cat has a visitor. Is that what's hitting the window?
Yeah.
I was like, is Bailey right there?
It's probably Boog's tail, but...
Oh, okay. So I wrote, first note, there is a lot of sexual tension between these two. And I'll tell you, I did not mean Frodo and Bill and Sam.
Uh-huh. Who was it?
I don't know. I think I was making the joke of between Aragorn and Boromir or something like that. I made the joke to Tiffany, and I made the note, and I don't remember the joke. I also did, how'd he fall that far without getting the wind knocked out of him from when Frodo fell off that little platform and he just got up like it was nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And then I tried to make a serious note. Sauron, which I definitely misspelled, was scared of Aragorn taking the time.
Huh?
The note was supposed to be the ring because that was it was one of the notes, the actual things that I wanted to seriously say from the books, even though, I said, Cody, we're not talking about the books in this one, but I lied. Here's the thing. Sauron's biggest fear was Aragorn taking the ring.
We're not talking about the book. You opened the podcast talking about the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's not talking about the Lord of the Rings book.
Oh, yeah.
But that was his, biggest fear was him taking the ring and bending Sauron to his will.
Yeah.
Which they have points.
Porn. They have porn.
I mean,
bending Sauron to his will.
I mean, there is definitely that. There's definitely that, but that's not what I'm talking about, Cody. That's a different podcast, okay? Not this podcast. That comes out on Wednesdays. But yeah, him taking it because he was strong enough to control it and all that. But there's a whole thing. But I'm there's a lot of very old timey Bible type things in the Lord of the Rings about Aragorn, and it's he's camps outside of a city. He's I can't enter the city until I've reclaimed the throne and all that. And I'm shut up, Aragorn. Go into the city and sleep. All right, just do it. Everybody else is doing it. Don't camp out here for no, And I'm like, I'm glad they cut that out and like changed his whole storyline from like in the books he carries around the sword shards with him because that's what the heir does is he has the sword shards all the time. But there's something cool in the next movie about that though that I like a lot. But that's a tease for the next one.
Oh, you're teasing the next one?
I'm teasing it. But this is about this movie. I have a cool thing that I thought I read it. It was a fact I didn't know, and I was like, this is one of the coolest factoids I've ever read about these movies. Mm-hmm. So, at the end of said movie, Fellowship of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring? Ring. Not rings. Ring. Mm-hmm. After Boromir's untimely demise, in an epic way, that redeems him from trying to kill Frodo.
Yeah.
Who is a wiener, we've established, and we agree on. Yeah. He's tightening his vambraces, as they're called, the little wrist guards. Yeah. Those are Boromir's, and that was as his... he took them so that he would always remember his promise to not let Gondor fall.
That's really cool.
And it was Viggo Mortensen's idea. That's not in the books. That's not in anything. That's not in the script. That was Viggo. He was like, well, what if he... He's like, well, I think he would take the vambrace. He would take something to remind him. He's not going to take his sword. He's not going to take his shield. Yeah. He doesn't carry a shield. He doesn't have anything else worth vambraces because they have the tree of Gondor, the white tree. Viggo Mortensen's the best.
He really is. He's just the gentlest.
He's a Jedi.
Sweetest.
Do you know about the knife fact?
I don't think I do.
So, when they're filming the fight with Lurtz, and Viggo Mortensen, Lurtz, as we all know, killed Boromir. That's who he was. You didn't know, now you know. Lurtz is his name. Yeah. Dumb. Anyway, so when he stabs him in the leg with the knife from Galadriel, and then Lurtz pulls it out, licks it, improvised, by the way, by the actor who played Lurtz.
I mean...
Because he's like, that's what he would do.
Was he fired the next day, or what? What a horrifying! It's only in the extended version, is the thing.
Yeah, that guy is a good guy. I like him. All right, did a good job as Lurtz. He's at several things, I think.
That's what you would do.
Yeah, I mean that's what a creepy orc captain would do, right?
Sure. They like the blood.
So you know how he pulls it out? Yeah. Throws it at him. He is supposed to throw a dulled, like, aluminum replica. What he threw, what nobody realized he had in his hand, not even him, was the sharpened, real prop that was, like, razor freaking sharp. Yeah. Flung it full force at Viggo Mortensen. It would have hurt him, might have killed him if it had hit him right.
Really?
And he just swatted it away, and they kept filming, and then, like, one of the prop masters walked over and he's like, you could have died.
Oh my gosh.
And they were like, I don't even think he was supposed to actually throw it at him. I think he was supposed to go next to him. Yeah. And so that was a completely like, he wasn't supposed to swat it.
I was going to say, it looks really good when he hits the dagger with his sword out of the air,
Yeah, that was like really like, that thing was supposed to go like just to the side of him and not, I don't think, come close to him. And he just, that's going to hit me. Bing!
Wow.
Which everybody's like, oh, that's like cool, but kind of crazy that he carries around the real steel sword all the time, whereas other people, when they're like fighting, use aluminum ones, and he's like, nope, give me that heavy beast.
I know, and then he gets like battle-worn because he gets tired from but that's how it would be. Like, you wouldn't be able to be full stamina the whole fight. Like,
yeah, but I mean, the fact that he does that kind of stuff made it so he knew how to swing it and could swing a real steel sword fast enough to deflect a dagger. But that's cool that a huge dude, essentially a real-life orc, actually threw a dagger at him and he actually smacked it away. Like, that was a real thing that happened.
That's so crazy.
It's so cool. So,
Viggo Mortensen is the man. Like, I feel like he doesn't get nearly enough acting roles because he is incredible. I know he either got... I don't know if he won Best Actor, but he got nominated for Best Actor when he did Captain Fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
A couple years ago, but he's great.
He got it for Green Book. Was it supporting actor?
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Leading. Best actor, best supporting actor. I can't remember.
He got nominated for best lead, I think. Because Mahershala Ali won it for best supporting.
Okay.
But I know he's been getting some recognition lately. But I mean, even just like as a dude,
Yeah.
he's the best dude.
I mean, he played Aragorn and an Italian bouncer.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're both awesome. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. Who else could do that? Daniel Day-Lewis? Probably. But we'll never know.
We'll never know because he's retired. It's the
He
third time
says
he's
that every
retired, but
movie.
we'll see. We'll see.
He says
You
it
know
all the time.
if what's the guy's name? P.T. Anderson. If Paul
Yeah.
Thomas Anderson is like, Daniel, I have this really cool story for you. It's about a comic book shop owner in Miami in 1974. He'd be like, all right, I'm gonna go live in Miami for a year and then let's get to shooting. I'm gonna put on 80 pounds. I'm gonna grow a goatee, and we're gonna shoot this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my facts. I didn't realize you didn't know the dagger fact, or else I wouldn't have built up the van braces, guard, whatever they were.
Yeah.
I don't know the correct term. The van braces, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was cool. I didn't know that. I've known the dagger thing for a long time, and that's the best one.
This is a great movie. Gets me pumped. I'm into it all the time. Reminds me of my childhood. It's a classic. IMDb top 10 user-rated movies.
Yeah.
It's sitting strong.
5th highest grossing film of all time, I think.
That's
what I said.
That's so great.
So good. Deserves
Winner
it.
of 4 Oscars. Not enough can be said. If you haven't seen it, why are you listening to a podcast? But go watch it. Then you're going to listen to the podcast.
Yes.
And then watch 3 hours of special features about making the 3-hour movie, and then listen to the podcast again.
And then 20 minutes of extended credits.
Oh my gosh. So many credits.
So
Credits
many.
on top of credits.
Yeah.
And with a MCU teaser at the end.
Yeah. And while you're watching those credits, you could subscribe and share and do all that things. For us,
It's,
this is the call
sure
to action. Everybody does it. Smash that bell. Pound that like button. Abuse the subscribe button.
I want to call out one of our fans on Twitter, Christopher. He's out here retweeting us, sharing us. Appreciate that.
Watch
at Opinion
the
Havers.
Alien.
At Opinion Havers. Watch the Alien. Oh, yeah. We got some guff. We got some guff about our Aliens podcast. We filmed, I don't know, 18 months ago.
Filmed. Recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
Recorded.
Everybody, he's like, oh, you only watch the first 2. They're the only ones. What are you going to see? You're going to see nothing. You're going to see nothing you want to see, or you're going to hear us talk about something and be like, well, now I have to watch it.
Yeah, you should listen to it.
Here's what happens in Alien Covenant. An alien does a flying ninja spin kick, and it's awesome. There you
I
go.
forgot about that.
I have thought about it every day since then.
I'm Camp Prometheus. I think you should watch Prometheus.
I'm Camp Baby Alien.
from Alien Resurrection.
Yes.
Oh man, haunts me to this day.
Yeah, it does.
Oh yeah, tweet me at Opinion Havers. And until next time, watch movies.
And have opinions.
PB.
What? Baby Alien.